And we're back. It's week 5 of Creator Spotlight. I think you noticed that something's different, but maybe not. Maybe I should introduce my fancy new host today, Julia. Hello.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Thank you for waking up so early during your vacation. Wait, you're not on vacation. It's fine. You're on the clock, so I don't feel so bad anymore.
It's true. I'm getting paid to be here.
Yeah. No, Julia has graciously decided to show up in this sweltering 40-degree heat in Montreal right now. I really appreciate it. But why don't you tell a little bit about yourself? I don't think anyone's ever met you on the stream before.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm happy to be here. My name is Julia. I work in the PR team on the Made with Unity side, which is really something we do to try to find and identify and highlight incredible games made with Unity, like SYBO, who will be here with us today. And I've been in the games industry, Karen knows this, for a long, long time. I started off as a 2D artist and a 3D artist working in mobile, and then worked in indie and AAA on the more marketing product side. So, and now it's all culminated in me being here today.
Yeah. Julia's worked on a lot of cool things, a lot of cool games, a lot of really cool. I'm going to say cool. I'm just going to call you cool the whole stream.
I am very cool.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But Julia and I work together a lot. Like she said, we are responsible for finding cool creators, made with Unity creators specifically, and bringing them to you. So very glad to have you here. For those who don't know, Creator Spotlight's been going on all summer long. It's a series that we started to highlight, again, great made with Unity creators, and to show some of the stuff that they do under the hood and to teach you guys to become better creators. So I hope you guys have liked the series so far. We still have so much to go. It went by in a whirlwind. I know you were all in the background making this magic happen. But we've had I think at least 10 or 15 streams at this point.
Almost 15.
Yeah. Yeah, who's your favorite so far? It's a trick question. Today's your favorite so far.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my favorite stream. I'm very excited about what's to come.
Yeah, awesome. So today we're going to check out SYBO and their very, very, very popular game, Subway Surfers. I'm really glad that this time around we're going to be featuring so many different creators developing on different platforms, a great mobile game. We hit a lot of indies and AAAs and things like that, but mobile game development is a completely different playing field. So I'm really glad to have this particular team here. Let's check out their trailer and then we'll introduce them. Thank you. And welcome, team. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having a great day. Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Mathias, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Mathias Nørvig. I'm the CEO of SYBO. I've been with the company since 2014 and have seen the growth from us being 20 rascals to now being more than 110.
Yeah, rascals is a great way to describe it. I think we'll go more in depth that later. Murari's like, very accurate.
I'm tech rascal, yeah.
Yeah. Murari, why don't you tell us what you do at SYBO?
So I'm tech director at SYBO. Been at SYBO since 2017, May, I believe. So that's bordering on 4 years and something. I come from mobile games, and at SYBO I look after our game tech on various projects, some internal, some external. I come from a mobile games background. I worked before SYBO. I worked at Ubisoft Mobile in London, feature games on a game called Hungry Shark. But yeah, very excited to be on this stream and also just talking about Subway Surfers and how we make it. So happy to be here.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about what the game is? For those who don't know, I'm hard pressed to think that somebody doesn't know what Subway Surfers is. But just in case, why don't you explain the game to us?
Yeah, I think Subway Surfers is a global phenomenon. We have more than 3 billion downloads. The founders, Sylvester and Bodhi, did a graduation movie in 2008 about a young kid escaping a guard. And when Temple Run showed us how a runner could be made, we said, let's also add swiping and more dynamics, a chasing guard and so forth. So it's a runner where you are caught painting street art in a junkyard and then you escape the guard. You dodge the trench, you pick up coins. and you basically run through on our world tour all the major cities of the world.
Yeah, I think it's become like its own genre at this point. It's quite basically you pioneered a very specific type of game. You've seen so many types of endless runners, but yours has lasted a really long time for a game in the mobile markets, like easily like almost 10 years. I think next year you guys are celebrating your 10th year of the game, right?
Yeah,
awesome.
it's been an amazing journey, and the fact that we have 100 million monthly players that are enjoying the content we provide them is just an honor. But it's also it comes with a lot of privilege, a lot of responsibility that we really treasure. We want to keep them excited, and we want to keep the game fresh and alive.
Yeah, and I think you guys will talk so much about that. That's going to be really interesting. So tell us a little bit about your company origins, though, because I think that's a really interesting story, and it'll feed a lot into your philosophies with the game. I think that's really fascinating as well.
Bodhi was having a skate clothing store in Viborg. Sylvester walked in and asked for a comic strip he had made, and they bonded immediately. They did the graduation movie. They basically bonded like brothers. Mm-hmm. And then they made a handful of 2 different titles that tried out what a smartphone was capable of. Cosmic Cap was the most advanced game they did. It's pulled from the App Store, but we're considering launching it at some point as a tribute.
You have to. This is a thing on our stream. We always want to see people's first iteration of something, some baloney kind of game.
Actually, Yutani, that is now in the game, was taken or inspired from Cosmic Cap, because Yutani comes from with a sci-fi reference. But I think the fact that they bonded, the fact that they knew that they had the aspiration, they were both animators by trade. They made the Subway Surfers prototype early 2012. The second iteration started looking a lot like Subway Surfers. They brought on Kilu, another Danish publisher that helped us publish the game for the first many years, and they helped co-create the game. Recently, we took over the full publishing ourselves as well on mobile. And we've been expanding the universe with more and more diverse characters, with more and more destinations. And we've grown basically 1 person per month continuously over the years, meaning that we are now 8 or 9 years in, and we are around 110.
Yeah. Wow, that's really great. I love it. So this is interesting too, the culture and diversity of the company and of your game too. I think like each of you can speak a little bit about that, but I would love to hear about that because once upon a time, I really wanted to work at SYBO and move to Copenhagen. I thought it would be the biggest, my ultimate goal in life was to come work for your company, mostly because I heard and saw about how incredible it looked to work there, what a diverse cultural group it was.
I think definitely you should put in an application, and I'll make sure to put you on the top of the pile.
But not taking her from us.
I'll make a few phone calls. No, we really appreciate having both the inflow of candidates. Of course, Copenhagen is not the biggest of gaming cities, but we love the fact that we've been able to relocate and locate more than 22 different nationalities in Copenhagen, all genders, all ages. The fact that we have such a diverse work group means that the games end up better. It also comes with friction. It's not easy being diverse. It's not the safe choice, but it brings much better product, and it brings much better teams around when you can sort of meet across nationalities and genders and all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think we have that too in Montreal. It's a really diverse city. I think we feel really strongly about having, and it just breeds innovation, right? I mean, you have a game that's lasted for this long, you need to constantly have to refresh it and keep it exciting for people, make it. And then that's a huge part of your game as well. The fact that, you're also representing a lot of cultures and a lot of different people in your game. So I think that to be sensitive to that is actually really important, right?
Yeah, I think we have, Murari can speak to both on the tech side, how we've also embraced it, but also all the events that we're doing and everything that we do to support that we want people to be themselves and to feel empowered. Murari?
Yeah, I just want to chime in, and it's definitely something that we think about a lot. And I know from firsthand, like when I moved to Copenhagen, it was quite an experience. There's definitely, like, it's a remarkable city, and when I joined SYBO, it was a completely different experience for me because of how inclusive it was. And I think what I really wanted to touch on in this particularly was how much attention we pay, even in Subway Surfers, the game itself, to try and make it sort of playable by as many people as possible. So we don't sort of the first thing we ask is not about sort of business model, but can people play it and can people enjoy it, and how many people and how many countries. And it's both a challenge as well as a very rewarding experience trying to support this game on such a huge number of devices across the world, platforms across the world, and just countries. So to try and make it a fun experience that people want to pick up and play again and again is something that we definitely, I feel like one of the elements of SYBO. And so I think that's where we try from the tech side and from the Unity side to make it as inclusive and as possible.
Yeah, this is so interesting. Again, I think I'm focused mostly on PC console gaming for so long. And a lot of the developers we have brought in, and that's why we wanted to do a whole mobile focus series during the Creator Spotlight. And, we talk a lot about, porting to Switch, all the challenges, and you hear the developers saying, oh, it's such a pain. And then you hear the mobile developers that are like, do you know how many Android devices there are around the world?
Oh,
there are 18.
Idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's a staggering number. It's like 18,000, and some of them are fridges or whatever. But which by the way, is the future of SYBO on being played on fridges? I would like to. That's my formal request.
We have not made up our fridge strategy, but for now we stick to mobile and handheld devices.
Okay, well, I'll keep pushing.
I'll throw that idea in the bin then.
Yeah, Murari. Okay. Darn it! I had a whole.
Just order that new fridge.
Who knows? They get more clever by the day.
But there are just so many devices, and it's like you said. I really feel strongly about mobile being kind of leading the strategy and the world in terms of the types of gamings we'll do, and really opening up the diversity. Again, you mentioned this, and I really don't want to gloss over the fact that diversity and inclusion and accessibility is about also making the games as accessible to as many people in different locations as possible. We tend to think of gaming, when we think of gaming, we tend to think of big AAA titles in very, big Euro Anglo-centric countries. And the reality is there's billions actually of players that are not at all in those spaces, right?
Definitely. And we want to make, as Murari says, both our platform available to those players, but we also care for democratizing the play, that you should be able to play as yourself and or whoever you want to be, because we both have players with handicap, or we have players that are from a specific country, or that wants to see themselves as something more adventurous, or something more cultural, or something more. And we want to allow all of that to happen, so you can basically find a player or character in the game that you can associate with. And then by visiting all the different UR2 destinations, we can also make them feel at home, or they can go explore places that they would love to visit at a later stage.
Yeah, definitely. I think that leads into a great question that I was going to lead to anyways, the content strategy. And it was perfect because just in chat, somebody asked, would it be possible to ask them what their strategies for retention is for such a casual game? So maybe we can pull up some B-roll footage.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Part of the retention strategy, the core of it is that we want the game to be as good as you always remembered it. We want the quality to stay sky high. We want the animation and the fun and the feel to stay as you remember it. The fact that we are perhaps one of the few mobile evergreen titles out there speaks to that quality. That goes to the team and the QA and everyone coming together in marketing and the tech side. It's just a solid game. It's fun to play. Then when it comes to content and how we build on that, we want to go to cities that you expect something from, where you kind of know the hallmark, or where you know that there is an Eiffel Tower, or there is a specific building that makes it that city. But then the art team also spends a lot of time figuring out what the vibe or the mood of that city is. So you run through parks, or you see trains, or you see side street shops that feel similar to something in that city. We cannot depict Champs-Élysées in Paris, but we can make that feel of running through something that would resemble that, even in an endless runner. So we want the content to stay fresh, and then later we will also try to see how we can actually make several cities available at one time. So that's in the pipeline, but still being worked on to be as solid as the core game is today.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Like, I think when I go online and talk to your community members, or I hear people talking about it, or all these great YouTubers who are always talking about the game, the one thing is like, oh, I can't wait to go back to this place, or I remember this other place. And I think that's really fun. And I think I mentioned it to you yesterday, but it really immediately reminded me of Assassin's Creed. Like, they just did such a marvelous job. Of course, they're recreating the cities almost exactly, but it's something about it that makes you want to visit other cultures. It makes you want to, it made me want to visit Italy and go and see those places. And it was amazing to see people felt the same way. And I think that really unites you as part of a game, that you can share that experience. I think it's very unique, especially since, the game is, it exists online, right? It's not a real place, but maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I think you said something really great in another one of your talks during Pocket Gamers, which is despite the fact that you visit all these countries, it's not about the country so much, like you said, it's like the culture. So culture is stronger than country, and you've created something called worldhood in this game.
Yeah, I think it's clear with the emergence of online and social media that you connect closer to other Justin Bieber fans or other sort of other fans of your subset, rather than necessarily who you live next to. And the fact that we can create a popular game and a broad sort of appeal game based on street art, hip hop, graffiti, all of the things that make up for that subculture, means that we can gather people from across the world into something, that we called worldhood in that talk, and that we build upon the fact that you should feel like you belong in that world, and that you are who you are, and you can play with everyone wherever they are.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you have street art, actually, and that you mentioned subcultures, and that it's part of this whole hype beast, because that exists currently in how popular it is only because social media exists, right? And it's quite not ubiquitous, but it's a parallel line that exists as part of like online fashion kind of like spaces. And I really like that, because I think it really brings people together, and it goes beyond representation as well. I think it's definitely like has inklings of cultures of the place it comes from, but street fashion is like, everyone knows about street fashion.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we try to, even though it's a simple game and it's a casual game, we acknowledge that we don't have the depth of Assassin's Creed. We don't have the numerous polygons or deep chat systems. But if we can inspire people to feel that it's okay to be creative, or if we can inspire them to express themselves creatively, regardless of means. Just seeing Jake spray his name at the beginning of the game in a legal place, obviously, but still being chased by the guard, is something that we treasure. And I think the rebellious side of SYBO is also part of that. That I don't think you would see titles launch in 2021 where you see a guy running from the guard, but we can harness that and say, look, the street art part combined with expressing yourself creatively and then having a fun send a type of game that core players are enjoying as a break is a wonderful combination.
Yeah, and I think that feeds into all of your product as well, right? Maybe Murari can talk a little bit about that. I love the fact that there's parallels between how you create the game, the content, and actually that's philosophies that you bring into your tech stack as well.
Yeah, and I think what Mathias said earlier sort of hit the nail on the head, which was the answer to the question about retention. I think first and foremost and we've seen it sort of firsthand over and over again, is the main solve, or the main thing that keeps players coming back, is how well the game performs. If it's not the only thing, but if that didn't happen, you can immediately see results change. So it's kind of one of those sort of core things that even if you don't have a sort of LiveOps strategy, or even if you don't have much of meta game, or if you're a developer that's just starting out, that's one of the sort of main things that you need to focus on. Apart from that, going into LiveOps and how you keep sort of a currently 9-year-old game very, very engaging, very relevant, and being played by so many people, is you have a really sort of robust and mature LiveOps stack. So some of the things that we do from our side, from the tech side, is we try and keep things as changeable as possible from a code perspective. So things are not hard-coded, or we try and make sure that doesn't happen, and things are data-driven, so that we can swap variables out easily, deploy them without having to deploy new updates on the app stores. We also do things like, if we wanted to make a live event on a certain time period, we can schedule these in advance, and we can actually say, okay, within this time span, we can change these values and make the game, sort of changes in that very specific way for certain people even. And then you go into things like A/B testing and segmentation. So we looked a lot over the past few years. We focused a lot of our efforts into trying to build this really robust and mature tech stack. And I think we're at a stage now where we're doing a lot that we are seeing results from. And finally, it's also because this game has been going on for so long, we also are very good at releasing very, very regularly. We have like a fixed time period where we release every 3 weeks, and we know exactly what needs to be done. And we've sort of polished that process so much. I can give you an example. When I joined in, and this will be relevant to the Unity devs out there, artists were having to sort of, if you had to put in a new character, they would sort of bring in their FBXs, make a prefab, but they would have to go to a programmer to then who would then have to add all the various scripts, and it would be sort of time consuming. And so there was a bottleneck there. And so over the years we've developed, and the same with like the levels that we come up with, the various sort of chunks along the way. And over the years we've streamlined that process so much so that artists can sort of be, liberated in that way and be able to do more things on their own. And we've got to a point where we're quite efficient at that. So in terms of releasing new content, and this goes towards what Mathias was talking about, where in the future we're looking at plans and ideas to be able to allow users and players to play anywhere they like, or if it makes sense in a native way that we think the game plays now. But to allow that to happen from a tech side is a lot of work, and we use things like Unity's addressable system to make that happen, where we take all of the characters and the hoverboards and the themes and sort of put them into these buckets, and then we can fetch those from a server somewhere, and people don't have to download cities they don't want to play, for example. So there's a lot of work that goes into this content strategy, and these are some of the things that we do.
Yeah, thanks for answering that.
I'd be actually curious to know if, because this game came out in 2012, I believe, quite a while ago. Had you planned or built the game from the very beginning to support continuous updates? Had you always planned on like constantly refreshing the game with new content, or was that something that kind of developed as the game found popularity? And
I think back when Bodhi and Sylvester first concepted the idea of the Subway Surfers crew, this is pre-game. They wanted to do an animation around it. They wanted to fold out the IP, and part of the concept drawings that we found when we went back to the drawers was actually train stations, train yards from the different cities around the world that this crew would visit. So yes, from the get-go, it was ideated that we should go on a world tour. But the world tour then became, as Murari says, more of a technical thing on how do we actually make sure that we can address the fact that it has to find a new city every 3 weeks, but also from a commercial or content point of view, which city do we choose? Can we combine it so that when the Olympics is happening, we're in Tokyo, when there's other world events, when Rio was hosting the championship in football, how can we time it so we are at the right place at the right time? And then the decision, until we're able to showcase more cities, then the decision is also, are we going back to the popular cities that people are requesting on social media, or do we want to inspire them with new destinations? Because fewer people were asking for Iceland, but we also wanted to go to something more exotic. So we have Kenya, we have Iceland, we have the North Pole, we have tier 2 and tier 3 cities of China that probably people haven't heard of. but that we wanted to also expand the horizon with and say, yes, we want to be a truly global game, and we want more diversity also in choice of world tour destinations.
I love that. It sounds like there's a balance there between like what the community is expecting and what you guys, like the vision you have for where the game's going to go, and just finding that balance of the destinations you choose. And I guess you build out the content calendar from there and the locations.
Yeah, plus we have to be mindful of that things might change, events might be pushed out or moved on, and we also want to make sure that we are striking the right balance of we want to be a near futuristic environment where hoverboards can exist and where you can see a robot, but it's still people running in a city. We want it to be recognizable and relatable for players. At the same time, we also met with people saying, could we make more fantasy-like worlds? We went to the moon and we went to Mars because we want to try things out, and how much can we push that? Could we go to Atlantis, or could we go to cities? And we're asked by partners, can we also go to a movie destination? And stuff like that is exciting, but also something where we have to keep the balance in check.
I think it's interesting you mentioned before that the founders were animators, because the game has a very animated style. Like I think that's kind of part of the look and feel of the game. So I guess maybe that, like, you can let me know, like, does that help with like kind of suspending disbelief if there's hoverboards or you're going to the moon? Do you think the style kind of helps let you explore more wilder destination?
I definitely think that the artistic choices that Bodens West and some of the early team members, Jonas, helped with in creating the first 3D assets, and the rig for the guard that is in the game is actually the original rig that they used for the animated movie. The fact that it's so jumpy and tactile in its approach means that you can push the boundaries for what a sort of concurrent city would be. It can be a bit more. There could be a portal. There could be something more mythical, and we want to explore it while staying true to the fact that you should also recognize your city.
Yeah, I love that.
And I know, like, just on the cartoony nature of things, it does add a lot on the technical side, because traditionally games sort of start from a 3D perspective. So it comes from, okay, we've designed this character in 3D, and this is how the rig is, and this is how the model looks, and here you go with your animation system, and you're good. At SYBO, I think because both the founders were animators and it came from a 2D animation, that sort of is in the lifeblood of the company, and the focus is on getting the feel of the animations to be spot on, and there's a sort of exaggerated feel which you see in cartoons, but you don't see so much in 3D games. And a lot of our work has been to try, like in the past, to try and translate that into Unity. And how that works is things like where the artists apply, squash and stretch animations to the meshes using morph targets. And then sort of how does that work with Unity's mechanism system? And there's a lot there that we've had to put in as custom work from our side to support this artistic vision of having this cartoony feel and this exaggerated look, which I think also makes the game stand out a lot.
Oh, so you're saying that we should bring you back. You should definitely show us all those custom tools you created, because I think
it's a follow-up session.
Yeah, I definitely would love to see that.
Yeah.
I believe that would be premium content. Yes.
That's why you're the CEO, Mathias.
Yeah.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
I have a follow-up question from someone in chat. Might be a tricky question, so feel free not to answer it. But they said, like, related to the previous one. So casual games can get pretty repetitive quickly, and even with additions of new skins or countries or cities. So does Subway Surfer sequels ever start popping into your minds as an idea, or do you ever start thinking of a separate genre game?
I think that's a wonderful question, and it's one that also speaks to the love that we're seeing from our fans, because there is a huge player base, both an active one of the 15 to 20 million DAU we have, but also the 100 million MAU we have. Also the dormant 2.9 billion that has had it on their phones, and that is sometimes popping back in. We want to excite them with keeping the live game fresh. But yes, we are also exploring what other titles or genres could come from this. We just keep things under tight wraps until we have something that we feel is as good and as exciting as Subway 1 is. So yes, more content will come from us, but we want to make sure that we never under-deliver. So stay tuned.
Yeah, the bar is a little high for you.
No,
but also, yeah,
it's actually a good question. But it's also, as any developer, it feels like when you have a game that popular, that it's like a rock, one of the global rock stars. The second album is really tough.
Yeah.
It's been the maturation of the studio that we cannot expect to make a game that gets 3 billion downloads. How do we make sure that we make something as fun where we can live with fewer downloads? Because having 1 million or 1.5 million daily new installs is crazy for any other studio to get virally or without paid UA. So we're super excited. At the same time, we want to live up to our reputation, and therefore it takes a bit longer, to be honest, for us to come out with the next exciting thing. Although I think Blades of Brim was a really nice testament to the capabilities of the studio.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. We'll let you guys know if we hear anything. I have kind of a question. It's not a controversial question, but you hear a lot of people talking about it, and it's about product stickiness, especially with hyper casual games. You know, in the industry, there's like a massive focus on what we call whales. And for those who don't know, whales are a lot of like games will focus on less on the number of users who are putting money into the game and more on that 1 or 2 people who, percent that will actually put all their money into the game. And that's how companies make money. How do you feel about that?
I think from the very get-go, the ambition of SYBO has been to make games that entertain, and as Unity does it by democratizing game developing, we wanted a game that was globally available and that was truly free to play. So no gates, no impossible levels, no you need to try this 100 times until you get lucky to pass it. We don't have energy in Subway 1. Of course, we're exploring how can we then make other games that monetize in different ways, and we cannot see that we can only make true free-to-plays, because then we become very dependent on ads. And that's something that some of our players is also saying, can we please spend something else instead of having the pop-ups or the interstitials?
Yeah.
So we want to balance that. Subway Surfers is truly free to play. You can obtain everything by playing, and it is accessible for the hardcore users. Of course, we allow people to speed things up, or we allow people to spend in the game. But Subway Surfers 1 is not that deep in terms of what you can spend on compared to other titles. For future titles, we try to explore a deeper meta, both for players to engage deeper, but also to spend if they feel like it. But we still want it to be accessible or achievable by just playing.
Yeah. Thanks. Go ahead, Julia.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a really important strategy. And like I've worked in, on the product side in AAA games and indie games as well, where that's always a conversation where it's like, how much do we give them for free? And then what are the things we gate? Do we gate the best stuff behind the paywall? And or do we let them earn everything? But sometimes that grind can be really, really intense. But I think it's, I really love this philosophy of letting you be able to play and get everything in the game just through the gameplay, and then kind of fast track your progression. Was that a strategy that started at the beginning? Again, I find it very interesting that this game has evolved over so many years, and I'd be interested to know if this was kind of a strategy you had from the get-go, or kind of have adapted to how players have been playing over the last year.
Basically, when the product was first designed, Bodil and Sylvester specifically talked about true free-to-play. That if you can keep players engaged and retained over time, then money will follow. And that was because back in the day, it was only meant to be the interstitials, and in 2012 there wasn't a lot of free-to-play mechanics or active monetization strategies. So they chose the belief and the direction of true free-to-play, and then just have interstitials be the payment. Then of course there is in-app purchase possibilities in the game, and over the years the feedback from the players has been we would like more opportunities to pay or to play or to engage with the game. So we're adding those features. We want to allow people to spend on what they enjoy playing the most, but also being able to just play a game for free. That's also why I'm such a big fan of Clash Royale or games like that, where you can play as much as you want, but you can also engage in other arenas if you want to. And I think that balance is really important to have.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. Like this game and other games that have stayed on my phone for a long period of time are the ones that allow me to choose. I always feel like, and it doesn't break my immersion because it's always feels like a choice and I didn't have to watch an ad. And then there are days where I'm like willing, I'm like, no, I'm just going to watch every single ad on the game. But I think this is an interesting one because actually the way that your ads play on your game are actually pretty, nice is a weird word to say it, but it doesn't break the immersion that much for me, actually. And it's like something that you think a lot about.
We try to keep it as short and as sort of well-timed as possible. And I think we are, together with a few other companies, leading the development on runners and how you can think the ad networks into the flow of how you play the game. Obviously, if you look at other genres, like puzzles, then energy mechanics is a norm. That is how it's done. But in runners, I think the best way is just to allow the players to run as far as they want or complete the levels, and then figure out if you can decide a method on the side that adds to that gameplay experience.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I kind of wanted to move on to something else, which is, this is a Unity game, and I would love to know how Unity actually helped the growth of this game over the years.
I can speak to the kickoff, and then I think Murari is the best one to explain how he perfected it.
Yeah, sure.
Back when the company was founded, the Unity was the enabler of making a game quickly. So Bodhi and Sylvester had graduated out of school. They had fundraised a small amount of money. They basically found a few very talented people that they contracted with. Jonas, who's still with us, and Tim. Brun and a few others that now did What the Golf for Apple Arcade. They were part of the first 5 or 6 that made Subway Surfers the original. Unity was the enabler because with a very small team, it was the fact that we could use an engine that could accelerate things. Of course, Kilu came on also in Unity and helped with it, many more engineers, and helped put in the front page, the integration towards Facebook, the ad networks, all the monetization parts were Kilu's achievement in the first many years. But taking over the game is also part of that, because when we then took over the full publishing ourselves for mobile, it meant that we had to rethink certain things because now we were doing everything in-house. And Murari and his team has really done a tremendous job of thinking and doing, but also rethinking and redoing some of the things for us to fully manage that.
And when the question is how has Unity enabled it, for anyone out there who's developed games before the advent of Unity, you will know what I'm talking about. It's a completely different experience. I mean, before there was Unity, there was basically and this is still sticking within mobile. You had entirely different code bases. You would have to often port code from one platform to the other. To deploy on one platform versus the other was a nightmarish process that just took ages and was often. I worked in places which converted entire code from one language to another automatically. I've worked in other places where you had to design UI and levels in a separate piece of software created only for artists, and then sort of bring that into text files or binary files that the game engine could then process. This whole thing that Unity has of designer-friendly and artist-friendly interfaces, and being able to preview what the game is like and make adjustments on the fly. Like, we take that for granted now, but that is a huge step change in game development and making that accessible to people out there and sort of democratizing that process. So in terms of what that has meant for Subway Surfers, that has just meant sort of us growing by leaps and bounds in how well we optimize that engine to work on so many devices out there. It's also meant sort of focusing on various things. So, for example, like Mathias talking about the swiping left and right at the start, we've had to do a lot to make sure that plays well on sort of devices that were released more than 10 years ago, and making sort of little changes in code here and there to accommodate in games, it's often a little bit of a fakery because, for example, let's say you're moving in a lane and there's a train coming at you. Now the train has a collider, but you would ordinarily, if you were in a purist game paradigm, that collider would be the size of the train. But in Subway Surfers and our running games in general, we have to sort of make choices on the fly based on, okay, what is the player experiencing at that time? What kind of device is it? We have to adjust the performance of the game based on those devices. And Unity has got better and better at enabling us to do that. Apart from that, yeah, like Mathias was talking about, we took over publishing of the game 2 years back, and that meant a whole lot of work in taking ownership of the publishing side of things because we were the developers for ages. And so we knew our wheelhouse was the characters, the worlds, the controls, the camera, the gameplay, and the feel of the game. Everything from the moment you hit the play button within the first screen. But everything outside of that, like you as the user, your cloud save data, where does that go, and how does that get saved onto different devices that you play on? How do new features get to your phone? All of that LiveOps part, all of that back-end networking aspect of things, we had to develop from scratch, and that was a monumental challenge given the size of our user base. And also, what that meant was we had to update a live app that was probably one of the most downloaded mobile games in the world with an app that basically rewrote the whole script from scratch, and we had to make sure that was as smooth as possible. And so that was a monumental piece of work that we took ages to do, but we finally succeeded, and we are seeing sort of the benefits of a cleaner code base, a more maintainable, robust code base, and being able to deploy these features without having to do update after update. So Unity has enabled us to do a lot of that, especially on the LiveOps side, because we use things like I said, addressables and asset bundles, and we use Unity ads, for example, in our games. So there's a lot of, we use Unity to monitor our crashes, whether the game is crashing on various devices. So there's a lot that Unity has provided in the recent years as sets of services that make it very easy for developers to now actually say, okay, here's your game, it's live, what are you going to do with it? Like, how do you operate it? And I think that's what I've seen as Unity's main paradigm shift in the past few years. It's not just a development engine, but it's also an operational engine.
That's amazing. I have two questions based on that. So one is
Sorry.
No,
it was a long speech.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for providing that. Like, I think you touched on a few things. This is kind of why I wish, I think we have to do a whole other stream and like hang out with Murari all day at the office because like, I would love that because you touched on a few things. You said it was a monumental task to actually like make these updates on a live game. I find that really interesting. So then do you have any advice or some best practices to provide for someone who's trying to like think of how they want to accomplish content and like live monumental infrastructure issues?
That's a very, very big, big question.
That's a little question.
So I'll try and digest it in small chunks. There's an elephant metaphor there, but I'm vegetarian, so it doesn't really work. So basically, I mean, things you can do to help yourself is don't assume anything at the start. So I think that's probably the most key piece of advice for any developer out there is a lot. I mean, at the prototyping stage, it's fine. Just chuck stuff in, make something that works and is fun. Like, I think that is the best thing you can do as a game developer is actually make a game, make a fun game, and then worry about the rest of it. But worrying about the rest of it comes once you actually have a fun game and then you actually want to make it a product. Then you basically go back to the drawing board and you see, okay, what have I done? What can I re-architect to make it as maintainable now as I can foresee? I mean, things change. You have to sort of adapt, and your code base at this point or your entire project will be different 5 years hence than it is right now. But there's a lot of sort of best practices in software engineering that you can employ from a very early stage, architecturally, as well as sort of just in how you write code.
I also think
apart from that, just design. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, but I think that's in hindsight. I think one is to really define what good looks like. What is because having a game that's been live for many years and then thinking let's redo it while keeping it exactly as is a crazy task in itself. And I think we learned a lot from that process, also in collaborating across the studio, because we had to figure out what actually makes Subway Surfers. There was a lot of spaghetti code from way back that was perhaps, I don't want to say poorly written because it's the most downloaded game of all times, but it was written by engineers that knew exactly how to make a game fun, not necessarily how to write it most efficiently, or at least a method has changed over time, so there was a more efficient way to write it later. So the progression of the studio, the learnings of the studio had to go in and be baked in with the new version. So I think in hindsight, putting the best team early on to sort of say, how do we actually make the most of it? And then involving the founders, we said, look, we have this covered. It's the game, we know it, we know how it is. And then when we said to the founders, look, stop looking at new projects, come back and look at the old one. They reminded themselves of many of the learnings that they had in their creation process. So they said, actually, this final small tweak is something we found in the wee hours in the very first sprint. Remember to have that in the new game, because now that you're super efficient in the code, now that you have all these competencies, some of the small twerks that we small tweaks that we made is actually what made the game most. Thanks. I'm a non-native.
Working code, make it happen, guys.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever put twerking in the game. But the final tweaks is actually what makes the game fun. It's actually what makes the tactility and the sensibility of the game so amazing. So yes, we need that, and that. And I think that was ultimately what made the current code base as performant, way more performant than the old one, but as fun as the old one.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, to be a fly on the wall that day when you had to go back to your spaghetti code and be like, oh, I think that's a really fascinating thing. This is why I'm not in game development anymore. It stopped in university when I didn't comment my code properly. Everything was hard coded and I didn't understand anything I commented. So, and that's why now I'm in marketing. So
I think it's an interesting difference too we see between some of the other developers who launch a game and then they don't really they can kind of hack something together for a certain feature and they're like, it works, we can get it out the door. But you have to, when you launch a live game, you have to live with it for probably longer than maybe you ever thought at the beginning. So I think it's really interesting, this kind of different approach and being able to go back and see okay, look at what you did, have to adjust and still be able to move it forward.
Plus the fact that we had a game that was live with 100 million players, and any other app that has so many downloads are way bigger companies. So when Facebook or Google changes their app with as many downloads, they have a massive company where they can activate different cells or different departments. We're just 100 people, and we had to sort of make things work where people said, look, this task, I don't really know how to do it, or how can we help each other? And even though the game has been live for so many years, it really activated that feeling of us being a startup that, look, this is the first time we have proper analytics. This is the first time we think publishing. This is the first time we have to build an extended backend. And how do we make all these departments and this communication flow is part of why this next chapter for SYBO is super exciting.
I think Murari, you were going to add something on that, or?
It's just when this whole process, we did a lot of sort of soul searching and trying to find exactly what it is that makes Subway. And I think we had a game after we rewrote the game. We had a game that looked exactly like Subway, had the exact same menus, had the exact same characters, and roughly ran on the same number of devices. But then when you mentioned spaghetti code, there's what happens in a game over time, whether it's spaghetti code is usually how it goes in for the most part, is that you make small little tweaks and optimizations along the way that you only, it occurs to you only after a few years. And so really old code bases, even though some of them might be spaghetti, are actually quite performant in the way that they've optimized down to a T. This swipe in this scenario works better if you do this. And so in code, it's kind of like if statements here and there that sort of take care of very specific cases. And so a lot of that we had to rework back into the new game, so to speak, the new old game. And what we did at the time was just talk to the founders and Mathias and upper level management at SYBO, but also expert level players. And we found people who are diehard fans of Subway Surfers inside the company, and friends and family who we just had them play this game again and again. And then they just gave us this expert level feedback that we would never have got otherwise by just sort of, if we were just testing, let's say a run, let's say you just wanted to test things that work, but maybe if you reached certain speed in this level, you have something that happens. And we got a lot of this kind of feedback where they said, no, the feel is just not there when you're running on top of a train, or jumping just doesn't feel quite right. And then, so we went back to the code base and we looked at, okay, what actually happens here, the original. And so we tried to, invoke a lot of that original feel of the game. And I think that's been part of the challenge, but also the really rewarding experience of sort of reworking a really old but very successful game.
Yeah, and I just want to sort of supplement that final story. I think the elder players I'm really thankful for their feedback. It was amazing, because the fact that we tried to say, look, actually the numbers are the same. He's running at the same speed. He is jumping the same height. Why does it not feel exactly the same? And one of the founders, one of his cousins, actually were the one that gave the deepest feedback, Jesper, who said, look, this final thing, it seems like the music is one split second too late, and this final swipe feels like it's... And he was basically, without knowing it, he was basically mentioning many of those if statements that Murari is saying. So he knew that it might follow a logic, but you were not following logic in the old game. So this was an outlier, and he remembered those as, look, you should... This should feel slightly earlier or slightly later, and the fact that we could balance it with feedback like Jesper's was just why the game is still going live and still being such an amazing experience.
Yeah, great. I hope that answers your question, Sophicius, about like how did they approach the code at the start? Was it more of a let's write and see how it goes? But I think there's a little bit more planning. I mean, you're still using your, you talked about professionalizing the code base, and I think you're still working on it. And it's like about scalability at this point. I don't think you... Unlike a lot of Unity developers now who are prototyping, I don't think you were prototyping. So I think that's what made the code really scalable. But Sophicia's had a great follow-up question, which is, how do you have a balance between good performance, good code, and good gameplay feeling?
That's so what was it? The good performance, gameplay feeling, and
good code, good performance, good gameplay feeling.
Okay.
Our upper bar is definitely a good gameplay, and it's not to sound CEO-ish and not say that engineering matters, but what ultimately matters is the fan experience. So if it plays well, consistently, then I trust that the engineers did it right. Then I trust that the artists have done it right. Then how they did it, it's not. They followed their specialty. They did their job if the gameplay experience is good. So I don't see it as contrasting things. I think gameplay is the tell whether a game is good. And then whether it's consistent is if it's based on a solid code base. Murari?
Yeah, and actually those things are often interconnected. Oftentimes when you're prototyping, you can get to a really good gameplay feel, but your good code might not even exist at that point, and it might not, good performance might not exist on some devices that you've never heard of, but you might have really strong gameplay feeling. And what can happen is when you take that good gameplay feeling, but let's say non-optimal code, and try and make it optimal, sometimes you will invariably end up affecting that very same gameplay feel by improving the code. And the way to balance, you don't even have to balance it. It's a kind of, what you do is you focus on the gameplay feel, and then you write the code better from the scratch. But you've got this sort of template to work with of like what to match up against. So this is how it should feel. And oftentimes when it doesn't feel right, there's usually a technical reason for it. So for example, if let's say on Subway Surfers, swiping from a train doesn't feel right, but the code looks excellent, it's probably because it's doing some sort of waiting somewhere. Even though the code might look pretty and be maintainable, there's probably a technical reason for that. And you can, with Unity and the profiling tools that are available, you can look at CPU spikes and try and see, okay, is any sort of garbage collection happening within this frame, or is any sort of allocation happening there's usually some technical reason to affect or that is the cause of that gameplay feel. So I think that's the detective work that basically happens is you can get good gameplay feeling and good code, but the order in which you do them is very interwoven. And good performance. So once you've got that and all of that works really well on one device, and you've got it in your hand, it's like it looks good and it plays well and it's written well, then you have the process of good performance, and that is across all the devices that you're targeting and the platforms that you're targeting. And then you start to look at broader things like automated testing across various devices and device farms, and also looking at crashlytics and to see if there's not, a game doesn't have to crash, but you can have non-fatal exceptions pop up that affect the performance of the game. So you might not notice it, and the game might look like it's running fine, but that gameplay feel is not there because it's spamming exceptions that you can't see. So there's oftentimes technical reasons, and then and that's a scaling process where you look at taking that good performance from one device that's playing well and across all of your different platforms and your different devices. So that's, I think, the final piece of the puzzle. I hope that answers some.
Yeah, that's great. I have one follow-up question to that. It's really interesting. So then, because you care a lot about democratization and that it should be available on as many devices as possible, but you also care about performance, where do you draw the line on what you need to support then? Or which devices you should support?
Historically, we've wanted to be as broad as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we've seen that devices, I remember when we took the decision that we couldn't perform perfectly on iPhone 4. And then we kept it on the list as long as possible. Sometimes new devices are added that are lower than our specs, and we absolutely hate it because Subway 1 should be available on all platforms for everyone to play. Mm-hmm. But so we've had to say, okay, we follow the iOS's up, the operating systems to the next level, but we want to support as many as possible.
What iOS did you launch on? Out of curiosity, was that which iPhone? Was it iPhone 3 in the day? 4? For the original Subway Surfer?
I was just a happy player back then. I didn't join. I joined as a consultant in 13. The game launched in 12. My guess would be 3.
Nice. So Sophicius in chat says that is a great point of view and great explanation. Thanks. It's very informative, you guys. Thanks.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. I want to reiterate, you mentioned it briefly, but I do want to mention the fact that you guys did decide to become self-publish. And I think that's something that comes up in a lot of our conversations with other developers that we bring on here. And that's really important. And it relates back to the, professionalizing code base as well. You have creative control now. You didn't give that away. And you're talking about that gameplay feel. And it's really important, right, to preserve that gameplay feel or many other things. What are your thoughts on that?
It's Subway Surfers, the IP has always been owned by SYBO. So we've retained creative control all throughout. But obviously the collaboration with a publisher meant that there were a lot of decisions that had to be joined or that had to fit roadmaps on both sides of the pond in Denmark. I think it added to the game, especially in the beginning, because you had to agree on many things that perhaps two younger studios having such a success could have risked some things if too many chances were taken. So in hindsight, I think in the beginning, it was actually a good thing that we would keep each other in check and say, let's not change too much. The freedom that we gained when we took over the game last year is definitely that we want to split test and try things out and do much more because we control the full flow from idea to integration. We can also better control the risk alone rather than having two sides that says, I'm responsible for this side and you're responsible for that. And how do we divide these tasks? And if it breaks, at what point does it count as your mistake or our mistake? And we had a great collaboration with Kilu. So it's nothing to do with them, but just the construct of having two deciders rather than one. Basically, when the game team comes to me today and say, we want to do this feature or this marketing campaign or whatever, if I have any doubt, then of course I just have to call the founders once and we have a decision. It's a very smooth process we have, and the game wins by it.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a great answer. I wanted to move on to your community and how you actually keep them engaged. It's not just about content, but it's about like adding tools, features that really resonate with your loyal fans. And you've done so many cool things over the years. You want to talk about which one in particular that you're particularly proud of?
I think I'll end with the one I'm most proud of, but I think some of the things we've done over the years, trying things out and seeing how it works. We did a live event in Copenhagen where we taught a lot of young kids how to skate and how to paint street art with some of the best skaters in the world, some of the best graffiti makers in the world, also close friends of the founders. And we did that to see if we could do live events all over the world. We did a big mural in Paris for a launch there. Mm-hmm. We've tried to do a live event in Los Angeles on Santa Monica, the boardwalk. We've tried different things to see what the audience best takes and sort of runs with. I think later what we've gone more of is engage the community online as well. So we've done user-generated characters where we made it a contest and they could draw, and the one that's coming out that was also shown in this one, Coral, is also part of that sort of fan-made community. We engage with them very heavily on social media, and then we also want to use our platform for good, and I think that's what I'm proudest of. The two things that comes to mind is the fact that we are a founding member of Playing for the Planet, that Unity has now also joined, but Supercell, Ubisoft, Google Play and Rovio, a lot of other big good studios have decided to join forces and want to use their platform for good. Our Green Game Jam result became a visit to Bali, where we made the island even greener and lusher, and basically presented the players with a lot of visual cues, recycled triangles, windmills, solar farms. The token that you were picking up was a plastic bottle, to sort of invoke that inspiration that we can do something, we should all be doing something. And the fact that we can show 43 billion visual cues to 100 million players over a month is super inspiring for me. That speaks to the purpose of me and the founders, but also of many of our employees.
Yeah, I love that you're using your platform for that. There's so many instances of that. And I think culture as well. You push a lot of the boundaries when you go to the different cities and things like that. You mentioned to me previously Shanghai during Pride and things like that.
No, it was actually even more local in China. It was Chang'an.
Chang'an, sorry.
So we went to Chang'an during the Pride month, and we wanted to just keep those two campaigns. So Pride campaign in SYBO became in Chang'an, and people said, "Whoa, that's ballsy, doing a Pride campaign in China." And we said, It's not ballsy. It's completely natural. It would be wherever in the world that we encourage people to be who they are and love who they want to. So the fact that we did active Pride campaigning is also something that we pride ourselves of, and something that we'll continue doing.
Yeah. Thanks. I think that's I really love that, and I think it really speaks to, again, the core ethos of the game, that rebelliousness that's like pushing the boundaries, and I really like that. And the democratization of that subculture and things like that too. I want to go back to user-generated content, because I noticed that's something you guys do a lot of. You have a really big presence on social media as well. And do you foresee these kind of like, I call it modding. At this point, it's not modding per se, but you do have characters that end up being characters that fans make that end up in the game and things like that, right?
We're very keen on bringing inspiration from fans into the game, and we want to do as much as we can while still keeping the creative direction and the force for good, or the force we want to exude in the game, to stay true. So it's a balance. Modding in its original meaning would only work if we could ensure that the gameplay experience would be as stable and as good. But what we're playing with is, again, taking in concept art and make them into characters, but also perhaps in the environment to allow certain graffiti pieces or street art pieces to be generated from street art that others have made, so that you can customize the environment more, or you can involve more creative direction or more creative expression in the environments. And we want to explore that while not breaking the solid gameplay experience.
Yeah, you talked about, like, you did so many collaborations, or you've invited like world famous skaters to come and join for live events. I personally would love to see, graffiti used to be, again, like this very taboo subculture, but it's quite mainstream now. People accept graffiti. People will hire graffiti artists to come and like paint murals for them and things like that. I would love to be able to see a Banksy inside of SYBO.
If you have his number, just shoot it over in the DMs. No, we would love a Banksy is obviously super inspiring for us as well, and it's a complete sidetrack, so I don't want to spend the time on it. But Murari and a couple of others in the studio basically concepted a street art app that we also funded and ended up co-developing with iDream Sky out of China. So we are really committed to doing both to allow people to express themselves creatively, but also encourage people to be more creative, because there is so much STEM science out there that science, technology, engineering, and math matters. But we really want to put the A in STEM and make it STEAM. The arts matter, the looks and the aesthetics, because if we don't have people who can draw and that can tell stories, it gets a bit too boring for me.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And coming back, like speaking of UGC, even though we're not talking about modding per se, we are exploring, like Mathias was saying, not just in Subway Surfers, but at SYBO in general, we're exploring UGC in different other products that we're making. For example, we're looking at UGC in AR. They express themselves in a more sort of native way, which we, and these are sort of forays and research projects that we're trying to look at and see, okay, what is compelling and what allows people to actually be creative. I think there we do have this sort of mission of, like Mathias mentioned, the A, with having people be creators. I think that is still what it comes back to. So it might not necessarily be modding, but it's still a way for people to express themselves in various ways. I think that is what we're trying to look at, and keeping within the mobile platform and the way of doing things on a mobile phone, which currently is where we find our place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think Unity aligns strongly with this personally. I think that, that's the new generation of creators. Technology has gone to a point where now we can bring in more social creators now, right? So why not have your end users and players also be creating your game with you, alongside with you? Which brings us to our next question, some of our final discussion points I wanted, since we're already talking about what we see as like the future of the industry and creating this like UGC and what does even modding look like. And you already talked about how there are parts of your games that are online, there's part of your games that are on social media, and then in real life they exist as well, and you're like combining all those pieces together. I wanted to talk about the Metaverse and this notion of digital twins. There's this game out right now, or about to be out. It's an MMO called Vulcanverse, and they're leveraging blockchain technology. They're creating an entire ecosystem around NFTs, and they're kind of redefining the game tomorrow. And they're like selling NFTs already, preemptively as space inside of their game that you can purchase. So what do you, as leaders in this space, think of this Metaverse space?
I think there's a lot of interesting places that the whole industry can go. Obviously, we're mostly familiar with our own space of casual mobile games, but I think the emergence, and we also the founders have invested in NFT space. We're also exploring what could that mean in a Subway Surfers universe. But as with everything that we do, we want to make sure that we do it in an authentic way that stay true to our values. The NFT right now, the NFT space is too consuming of energy and all the things that we try to do on the climate side in playing for the planet. But once the more energy efficient ways emerges, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of interesting ways where you can combine fanhood or fandom with big universes and experiences, both real life and digitally. We want to explore and we want to see where it goes, but right now our focus is on our core.
Yeah.
And just touching on what Mathias talked about, I recently read something because he mentioned the energy efficiency, or the inefficiency rather, of how NFTs are generated or stored. I was reading something about the fact that currently it's using a proof of work algorithm to validate these transactions, and apparently that's the part that requires the most sort of processing power and generates the most, heat and hence harms the planet. And I think I remember reading that there's another algorithm now called proof of stake, which apparently is a better way of doing things. It seemed interesting at the time. I did want to look deeper into it because NFTs, at least in the way that we've been seeing them in this year, have really enabled and empowered artists and creators in a way that hasn't happened before, in that it's also decentralized. And so I think it's a very powerful device. It's a very powerful platform mechanism for artists. And I think that's where we're also interested in finding how can that enable fans to have this sort of sense of ownership, but it's something that we're looking at a bit longer term. But it is an interesting space. And in terms of the metaverse itself, there are a lot of these events are becoming more popular. I think there was a concert by Ariana Grande in Fortnite, I believe, and there was, there's people who really love expressing themselves online, and the tech part of me sort of loves it, and the person part of me sort of also feels like I would love to see a balance, because the inevitable goal of the metaverse is that everyone sort of lives in this isolated bubble where they're in either VR or in a gamified environment. And that's why I personally find AR quite interesting, because it's a blend of the real world and virtual layer over the real world. And I still really like the sort of person part of me really likes that human connection, the fact that people go outside and meet and connect. And especially in times of COVID, when we really were not able to do a lot of that, we know what that means to us as human beings. So I would love for technology to also take that humanistic approach. And that's why I think AR really treads that line really well so far. And I think that's why I'm really interested in AR personally, because it's not just sort of isolating from the real world, but it's also having your own personal layer of reality on top of it. So
yeah, you're totally right. I think the tactility of the real world still really matters. People always take that for granted. And somebody in chat just said it's like NFT is just a new tool to tap into. VR didn't exactly take off as much as was predicted to, unlike AR. So it really comes down to the business phase, I guess.
I completely agree with that. And it's interesting because we never really went for VR because it isolates you too much. It exists well within certain genres. It exists well within certain experiences. But I think the fact that you can, and I completely agree. I lost my sound for a second there.
No worries.
But I completely agree with the fact that we want to encourage people to also meet each other real life. At the same time, I see a beauty in the fact that people can engage with an Ariana Grande concert level-footed, because everyone could be there, even if you hadn't a pass for a real-life concert or couldn't afford something commercial. So finding that right balance is tough. It's a bit beyond where we are strategy-wise for SYBO, but we are happy to entertain the conversation.
Yeah, nice. No, it's just that interesting to hear thought leaders like actually have opinions on it, for sure. You mentioned something, Murari, about like that creating a new series of jobs per se. Like the new generation is very much about a creator generation. I feel, especially with the advent of new platforms and how much it changes. Do you feel like with the new jobs being created potentially in this metaverse, there's new ways to people to create an economy? It's a very deep question.
No, I'm getting all of the really deep questions, but I'll try and plunge in and not drown. They go hand in hand. Again, like it's with platforms, you often have economies as a sort of not consequence, but a platform invariably becomes an economy by virtue of what it allows and what it provides. So, and definitely in what I'm seeing, UGC gaming is becoming very popular. So not just creations, but also people creating little games or set pieces or little experiences. It seems to be really popular. With things like Roblox and Minecraft, and there was recently I read about Hyber as well. There's a lot of these platforms that are coming where people love creating games for other people to experience. And then within those games, people love adopting avatars or metaverse versions of themselves to experience these games. So I think definitely if that trend continues, the natural conclusion will be that there is an economy around those, as there is a platform that is becoming popular. So, for sure.
Yeah. Mathias, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think it's exactly as Murari says. It's all about jumping in and not drowning. I think you did a good job, Murari. It's definitely an interesting area, and there will be a lot of things to explore. As a company, we don't have a set sort of thought around it. It's just a very interesting space and something we want to explore. We want to keep to our credo of making sure that what we do is solid and good. So when we come out with something, if once we do activate the NFT space, it needs to be something that is super exciting and rewards our fans.
Yeah. So on that note, I'll ask, what's the next evolution of the game, and how does Unity play in that next evolution of the game? What would you like to see Unity help you develop? Since you said that we were there as part of the inception of this, so what's the next step that we need to do to help you?
I think there's a lot of interesting avenues or different ways that Subway Surfers develops over time. We obviously have a very interesting and super secret timeline of milestones that we're rolling out, and it would be imprudent of me to sit and say, please help us with milestone 3. But we love the fact that we work so closely with Unity, that when we have issues or we see things that could be improved with the platform, we shoot them over, we have deep conversations, and things are very often quickly resolved. So I think that's the future of the relationship. On Subway Surfers, we want to do a lot of things. As Murari said, prepping for this meeting, of course it would be wonderful one day to do multiplayer if it fits a gameplay design, if it fits the experience. But at the same time, we have a lot of players who play a lot of multiplayer games and really enjoy that Subway Surfers is an offline game that they can play without being online or without being with us. We believe that presence of other players will matter, and we believe that interaction will matter. And anything that Unity can do that increases the feeling of belonging, increases the ability to express yourself, and when you are given a choice, you choose right in terms of social or climate, then we're really happy. And then world peace, obviously.
World peace.
I promised that, Leon.
Yeah.
Also world peace.
Yeah. Perfect. On that note, we all want world peace. So Unity and Subway Surfers will work together to try to achieve that, hopefully. If any of the C-levels are listening to this, tall order, but I think you can do it.
Wow.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you for staying and answering so many questions so very candidly. I hope we weren't too, we poked too much. Yeah, but you have a wealth of knowledge, and I really wanted to tap into it. But thank you. Chat is very into the world peace. OKRs for next year, world peace achieved. That's great.
Okay, great.
We can all do the steps towards it.
Yes, together. Yeah, thank you so much. This was a great talk. It's been really amazing. Yeah, picking your brain. I hope we have more content to come. Chat had a ton of suggestions for technical content we'd like to see. So. No promises, but we really love Subway Surfers, so I think we can definitely bring them back or do more content, and we'll take a deep dive into actual Unity next time. But thanks for all your advice. I hope you had fun.
Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So guys, this is week 5 of Creator Spotlight. Thank you so much for joining. Tomorrow, we're going to be checking out Kid Fox Games, Boyfriend Dungeon. For those who don't know, this is like the super awesome narrative game. If you like smooching weapons and dating them, then definitely check it out. I've been a backer of this game way back when. I'm very excited. Of course, I stayed up all night to play it. So I'm very excited to finally talk to Tanya about it. Mathias and Murari, have you ever played Boyfriend Dungeon, or you plan on playing it? It just released.
I will now.
I'm always researching, so whenever I hear a game that sounds exciting, let's check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I'll send over a couple of copies for you guys, and you can let me know if you like it.
Smooching weapon sounds great.
Yeah. Oh, I love that Mathias is like, I was going to say something, and I am going to hold back. Yes.
Murari and I can go riff forever, so we can do a stand-up session later. But I loved seeing new games.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much again. This was a great talk. I look forward to seeing you guys back here soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for all your great questions, chat. It was awesome. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.